Welcome to day 2 of NAILBA 39 Engage. I'm your virtual MC, Katie Fallinger. Our second day of events is jam-packed with highlights. Today's keynote from Dr. Kevin Elko will focus on leadership and goal setting. We've got a carrier update from Lincoln Financial, a discussion on AG 49A, BGA and carrier panel discussions on new frontiers in the industry and the future of underwriting, a spotlight solution on producer segmentation and data science. Also, the opportunity to interact with vendors in both our exhibit hall and VIP exhibit hall, and a producer-focused segment to wrap it all up at the end of the day. It's time to engage. Have a great day 2.
Welcome NAILBA attendees to this session, A New Perspective, Getting Quality Advisors Through Profiling and How to Create Stickiness Through More Applications Per Advisor, Diversity, and Sales Support. My name is Tracey Edgar, and I'm the Vice President of Sales at OneAmerica, and I'll be moderating today's panel of subject matter experts with diverse backgrounds. I really hope you enjoy today's session. I'd like to take a moment and introduce our highly esteemed panelists. First on the panel is Mr. Chris Gandy. Chris has spent the last 20 years helping individuals reach their most important financial goals. In 1999, Chris started his own financial services practice, and since then has traveled the United States working with athletes, key executives, and minorities. Chris was a communications major at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. Outside of the classroom, though, he played on the Fighting Illini, I have to think how to say that, basketball team where he was co-captain, and he earned second team all Big Ten honors. After college, Chris played basketball professionally for the Chicago Bulls, San Antonio Spurs, and in the not professional league in France. Early in his career, Chris worked as a Northwestern Mutual Financial Network representative, and while he was there, he received numerous awards as a top producer. He became a $1 Million Roundtable member in 2001, and in 2005, Chris moved his financial services practice to the Molyneux Financial Group, where he received the Impact Award in 2006 and the Management Council and Leaders Conference honors in 2007. His agency eventually became Mass Mutual Chicago, so lots of accolades there. In 2010, though, he went on to begin and build his own agency. He leads a team of highly skilled advisors while still developing his clientele nationwide. He's been featured in numerous magazine articles: Crane's Chicago Business, GQ, Black Enterprise, and African American Career World. Chris is a lifelong advocate of diversity and inclusion. He serves as the current vice president for the board of directors for NAIFA, NAIFA DuPage, and serves on NAIFA's prominent national committee for the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. He travels nationally and speaks to multiple diversity groups on the topic of diversity and inclusion. He lives in the Western Chicago suburbs with his son, Jordan. So welcome, Chris.
Hello.
Next on the panel, Chad Eyrich. Chad is the Vice President of Long-Term Care and Linked Benefit Sales at Ash Brokerage. Chad is like an LTC maestro. He not only helps educate advisors and their clients on the importance of care planning, but he also helps orchestrate a smooth application process from start to finish. He travels throughout the United States to present educational seminars on care planning, funding options, and alternatives to traditional long-term care insurance. Prior to joining Ash, Chad was a financial advisor, managing assets for holistic plans. In addition to his long-term care professional and certified in long-term care designations, he has life, health, property, and casualty insurance licenses, and he serves on the advisory board for the Corporation for Long-Term Care. A former collegiate golfer and assistant golf pro, Chad enjoys hitting the links on his free time. He and his wife, Rachel, live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with their 4 children, Celia, Gianna, Oliver, and Urban. Hi, welcome to the stage, Chad.
Everybody.
Rick Stewart serves as the Director for Long-Term Care Solutions Center at Crump Life Insurance Services. He began his career with Crump in 2006 and has over 14 years of long-term care and linked benefit product sales experience as a long-term care wholesaler. During his tenure with Crump, Rick served as Regional Director for Crump Solution Centers, overseeing the sale of long-term care insurance, disability insurance, and annuities within his designated region. Before joining Crump, however, Rick spent 9 years in personal production, including 4 years with a major carrier, where he was a top performer and qualifier of the $1 Million Roundtable. His varied background gives him the ability to really view things from an insurance professional's perspective. He holds his Series 7, 63, 65 life and health insurance licenses and has his CLTC designation, has a Bachelor of Science degree in finance from Towson University in Maryland, and he resides in Parkton, Maryland with his wife, Amy, and their 4 children. Welcome to you, Rick.
Thanks.
Dr. Joel Mier. Dr. Mier has been leading the charge for customer centricity for over 20 years. He's a Silicon Valley native. He's a lecturer of marketing and innovation at the University of Richmond and a visiting professor at Universidad Panamerica in Mexico. Joel frequently teaches at leading international universities, such as the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, the INCAE Business School in Costa Rica, and Eastern International University in Vietnam. Joel has spent his entire practitioner career at industry-leading companies like Adobe, Contractually, and Gardner in strategy, insights, and marketing leadership positions. He has created and led the strategy, insights, and analysis function at Netflix for most of the company's formative first decade, instilling a passionate focus on the customer company-wide. His efforts created one of the most widely acknowledged customer-centric cultures in modern business. Joel also has a deep and rich experience in the financial services industry. He led the marketing function at Genworth Financial, and he's consulted with industry leaders such as RBC and Commonwealth Financial Network. Dr. Mier also leads the Mier Practice, a consultancy that aids organizations large and small in addressing strategic growth issues through a deeper and organizational focus on the customer. His clients include market leaders such as Under Armour, CarMax, and industry disruptors such as Natural Retreats, Alton Lane and Susie, and early stage startups such as Feed Trail and Occasion Genius. Welcome, Dr. Mier.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here today, and welcome to this year's NAILBA panel sponsored by OneAmerica. I'll tell you what, 2020 has certainly been a different kind of year, and while many of us are really ready for this year to come to an end, I'm sure that 2021 is going to be just as interesting and is going to come with its own set of challenges. You know, there's a fantastic quote from Dr. Wayne Dyer that says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And as we look back on this year, things have been different professionally, personally, socially, and societally. Our perspectives have led us to adapt and maybe even change. In other words, we've changed the way we look at things. So let's just begin our discussion there. So the first question is going to be for our entire panel. So as we've been witnessing across the nation, diversity and inclusion are at the forefront of today's conversations. How do diversity and inclusion impact your research, improve stickiness and partnerships, and drive additional sales? Dr. Mier, if you'd be so kind, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, of course, of course. Again, thank you, Tracey and OneAmerica, for having us. You know, the thing that strikes me most about that question, and what I think is so important about bringing these issues to life for the entire society, right, is I guess I think about it on 2 levels. One, there's the human, the right thing to do, which I hope we all agree, and everyone in the country can agree that that within that broad tent that is, at least here in the US, that is America, we are better off by a deep, rich understanding of one another, empathizing with one another, listening to one another. We're just a better group of people. We're a better society. And so I'm sorry there's maybe some debate about that with folks, not on this panel, but somewhere in the country. But I think it just empirically is. So we have that, which is just the human perspective. But the other perspective, which I'll just opine on briefly, is if you look at study after study, let me put a business perspective on this. If you look at study after study, the greater outcomes come from teams that are diverse. Better ideas come from diversity. Better outcomes come from diversity. So your organization, your family, your country will be better by opening up the aperture so that everybody is engaged and involved. And if we're all seeking better outcomes, societal outcomes, business outcomes, health outcomes, cultural outcomes, then the path is abundantly clear and empirically demonstrated that it's through diversity and inclusion. So I'm grateful that we have moved the ball forward. I'm sorry it's taken us so long, and clearly we have a lot of work to do, but I'm so glad that we're having this nationwide conversation, and I hope we make great progress quickly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Chad, how do you see diversity inclusion as an impact to research, stickiness, partnership, or how do you see it driving additional sales?
Yeah, and I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what Dr. Mier said of just different perspectives. And while we had that really before everything kind of hit in 2020, our eyes have really been open to getting the different perspectives of individuals within the organization, different thought processes, not having what sometimes I refer to as a home office mentality, and where everybody's just following a leader, but where the group is able to come together as a leader in itself to get us to a better position. And we've seen that cascade to our relationships as well, that they know they're going to get a different perspective when they call in and they speak with the team or they work with us here, which in essence helps to grow business, because you don't want to pick up a phone and call a partner and everything is robotic. And, everybody talks different. We are an organization spread across the country from our resources that we have, and the perspective and thought process of somebody in New Jersey is much different than somebody that's in Colorado, which is different than somebody that is in Indiana. So we've really taken this as an opportunity to expand our diversity and inclusion with how we become successful as an organization. And I want to say, I agree with Dr. Mier. It's unfortunate that it's taken us this long to kind of have our eyes open. And we're just at the beginning of what's going to be a very, very long journey within changing this thought process.
We'll move on to you, Chris. So if you think about diversity and inclusion as it relates to, research, stickiness, partnerships, or sales, how would you answer that question?
So I will attack it from a different angle. I am on the forefront of numerous organizations in which we are looking at diversity and inclusion. I always say that we have to accept who other people are if we really want to understand where they came from. So being a diverse advisor myself, I do represent, not just from being, you mentioned I'm very tall, I'm 6'9", so that makes me diverse, but also because of the complexion of my skin. But one of the challenges we've had for years is that the insurance industry, unfortunately, does not look like the marketplace in which it represents. So we now are starting to pay attention to that, and clients are saying that, we're potential clients too, where we are the people in which you might have overlooked. So, it'll be interesting to see where we go going forward. As many people have said before for this, I think that if we take a holistic view and understand that people are people, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what they represent, I think we get to the place of understanding. Until then, I think we still are drawing lines, because of the idea just simply is that just by saying the fact that we understand, we've now identified, quote unquote, a group of potential people, which is now again stereotyping a group of people inadvertently. So I think part of the challenge is that we have to rewire our brain to change the narrative, especially if we want to go into the marketplace and continue to go into the marketplace and double down and actually pick up some of those clients and acquire some of those clients who at times didn't get the education earlier about the products in which we have the ability to bring to the marketplace. So there's a lot of work to be done from the corporate side to the advisor side, to the support side, to the communication side across the board of how we go about doing business with the marketplace going forward.
Yeah. Well, and I do notice, me being 5'3", I do notice that you're 6'9" when I'm standing next to you. It's like trying to look at the top of a tree.
Diversity.
Thanks for that. Rick, I'll have you answer the same question about diversity and inclusion and how it impacts research, stickiness, partnerships, and drive sales.
Yeah, thanks, Tracey. I'd love to focus on the partnerships because 2020 has really been a challenging year for everyone from advisors to the carriers to marketing organizations such as ours, where we've done this year more than ever, started to reach out, working with other marketing organizations, with the carriers. Because of this year, we've had to adjust how we do business and create processes, programs, software that's going to help us continue to keep the lights on and move business forward. So when I think of inclusion and diversity, we've done more this year doing research development on different platforms with a lot of other companies and carriers to help us drive business. And I think it's been very helpful in helping us kind of come out of the pandemic in 2020 and look forward to 2021.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks to all of you for your perspective on that. So Rick, I'll pivot over to you. You're responsible for leading a really large and successful sales desk that supports just a huge amount of advisors, and one of the things all distribution professionals are trying to do is to increase the stickiness that they have with those producers. How have you created that sort of stickiness between your sales desk and the advisors that you support?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tracey, because I think there's a couple of good points here. One, it's really important to understand your advisor's needs and skill set. I use an example of a grocery store. When you go to checkout, right, you have an express lane for agents that just want to place transactions, know what they're doing, and they're very fast paced. You want to have the technology and the ability to help those agents out. At the same time, you have other lines where agents that need a higher level of service, whether it be illustrations, field underwriting, case management support, you have those levels of service available. Some people now don't even want to shop, right? We want to just put in our order online and have everything come to us. We've expanded more into point of sale where we work with advisors and do point of sale support as well. So really trying to match the advisors with the level of service they're looking for is key. The other thing we're really focused on this year is obviously delivering accurate and timely information. As a lot of carriers and information is moving very quickly, products and pricing are changing, at a state level. It's important to get that information in your advisor's hands quickly so they can make sure they're taking care of their clients. So we're really focused on that this year, and we'll continue to focus on those going forward as it's an important aspect of the business.
Yeah, so it's really about flexibility and support for the advisor, being able to flex to what they need and then making sure that they're equipped with what they need to be able to do their business in a better way.
Oh, absolutely.
So Chris, I'll pull it over to you now. You've, just consistently been a very, very successful #1 individual producer. You've been the #1 individual producer with OneAmerica for the last couple of years. But despite all that's going on in the world around us right now related to race, have there been opportunities that have opened it up for African Americans as a result of everything that's been going on, would you say?
Well, Tracey, it's an interesting dynamic that you throw out there. And I'm going to just dovetail a little bit about what Dr. Chad said. And I'm going to actually take his 50,000-foot view and go a little deeper. So we saw, for a brief moment, we saw what chaos looks like in society. We saw riots. We saw an abuse of power. Right, we saw people that had power influencing other people based on dynamics. We saw that, and one of the things we saw is a group of individuals that came together that said that this is just not okay. I saw what happened, and everyone said that we understand where the African American voice is. Right. The challenge with doing that is the perception and the reality are two different things. And so part of it that's happened is that there's now sales opportunities that didn't exist before because you've seen the disconnect that has been there, and now you can double down potentially on the efforts to understand, to empathize, to really hear the voices that are talked about. It's not necessarily, and I was on a diversity call 3-4 weeks ago, and I said, the conversation is not about revenge or getting equal. It's just about give us a fair chance, give minorities a fair chance to excel, and also to experience some of the same products and services that are in the market space that unfortunately have not been marketed to, or not been experienced, or perhaps not been educated about. And so you ask the question, has that opportunity opened up? That opportunity has always been there. I think what's happened is now people are aware that the difference between their perception of what that product may be, I think Dr. Chad had it right on the nose, is no one wants to buy, no one wants to be sold, but everybody wants to buy. And they want to buy for their own reasons. So when we understand what those reasons are, and if those reasons are reasons why they haven't been able to, what I call, transcend their socioeconomic stance of where they are, or start to create that momentum or generational wealth, then we have to go back as a society, as companies, as insurance carriers, as providers of resources to help people, and now start to educate people along the way. So a society that's always been there, the spend is $170 trillion a year in the African American markets. If we look at all the companies, how much of that spend are we actually getting? And I would fair to say that it's a very nominal amount. I think if we just think about doubling, how do we affect the minority space, the African American space specifically? How do we get part of the $170 trillion? How do we participate in that? I think that they'll start to realize that if we can draw those connections and listen, I think that opportunity will just continue to expand and expand. So my encouragement to companies and individuals and people that are listening to this call is to double down your efforts for comprehension and understanding, and then also appreciation.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great perspective. Chad, I'm going to pivot over to you. So, you lead this long-term care, organization, just well-known with a national footprint, Ash Brokerage. When it comes to long-term care sales, the majority of the sales are made because a client actually asks the advisor. So the sale becomes very reactive instead of proactive. How have you built success getting your producers to focus on the second, the third, the fourth proactive sales instead of just the one reactive sale?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if focus is the right word, because we don't work with a lot of advisors that this is a key part of their business. And what we found is the reason why they're not asking their clients is they're uncomfortable and they're not confident in having this conversation. I'm sure, Dr. Mier agrees. Rick, you agree. Chris as well. And I'll use the analogy of, they talked about me playing golf in college and being in the business. I'm also from Hoosier country, as everybody understands. So yeah, I'm a basketball guy. But to relate it to basketball is, why don't a lot of guards tend to dribble with their offhand? It's because they're not comfortable. And so they just have to do it over and over and over and over again to become comfortable with it. And we developed a platform to make them comfortable, to take long-term care that can be complicated and make it simple through a 20-week educational platform to where they receive very small, short, concise messages every week. On top of that, we offer bi-weekly messages that go out, and then we hold multiple what we call long-term care university or long-term care conferences throughout the year to provide them with the information. So we have to stay in front of them. I mean, as an industry, staying in front of advisors like Chris and working with partners like Rick and partners like OneAmerica and utilizing resources like Dr. Mier, is just we have to continue to feed them information, because there are very few experts that do this, and there's very few advisors that are committed to this business until it affects their business. So we just stay in front of them. We give them a platform. We try to provide them the best resources and education that we can. and then give them those resources and that they have to educate their clients as well.
Yeah, so just increasing the depth and the breadth, right, of your relationship with them. That makes sense. I'll pivot over to you, Dr. Mier. So you've helped create one of the most innovative companies in the world. You teach innovation, you teach disruption. What's your one piece, or your one, it could be maybe your one watch out, that you would share with the insurance and financial services industry?
Yeah, that's really interesting. We all know industries that have been disrupted dramatically, right? We can think of the cab industry, right? Think of the hotel industry. There's nothing that prevented them from having the same insights that Uber and Lyft and Airbnb had. There was nothing other than what's known as dominant logic, right? That industries and companies, the norms that you embrace become part of your DNA. And now that this is the way it manifests itself is through the expression, this is not how we do it, right? This is how we do it. And that now becomes lore and part of culture and part of DNA and part of industries. Therefore, anytime an idea that is different than that tries to pierce it, it gets deflected. And so that's every industry goes through it. It just does. Every company, every industry. And, if I look at financial services and I look at the growth of a lot of the digital platforms and the fintech platforms, there is innovation happening now. And to me, the one piece of advice, I'll get to something tactical in a minute, but the one piece of Uber advice I would say is you need to be open to change. Yeah. Because if you don't, it's coming anyway and it will roll you over. And that could be any of us on this call. It could be a producer visiting clients. We need to be open to look at how we do things across the board and be open to change because it is happening. And I'd rather embrace it than be run over by it. And let me just give one quick example, if I may. And we talked earlier about the relationship between advisors and consumers. Let me now talk about the relationship between carriers and say, Tracey, like your sales team, and advisors, right? Like Chris. So that's a very different dynamic than Chris has with his clients, correct? But one of the things that is really important to realize is that Chris and advisors like Chris are people too, just like his clients are. And the number one variable that impacts an advisor and their actions to a carrier, whether or not they represent your product or they promote your product or they sell your product, the number one variable in that equation between a OneAmerica and a Chris is Chris's personality. That explains approximately 1/3 of all the variability amongst sales of advisors of a product like yours. And so think about that. How many companies have institutionalized an understanding of advisors' personalities? And the answer is, I haven't found one yet, right? No. Yet it plays such an important part in understanding. It's the same extension, but we're moving up a little bit of understanding the personality type, how they like to be worked with, communication type, all those types of things. And the final thing I'll say is oftentimes when I think about a sales, in general, a salesperson, they are indeed the lifeblood of any company I've ever worked for, and they're doing things I could never do. So I have so much admiration for them. I have not met an advisor yet, and Chris, you may be the exception, so please forgive me, where the default is not, just get me in front of them. You get me in front of them and I'll do my thing, right? Just get me in front of them. And that might yield a close rate of 60% or 70%, and that feels really great. But that means for 20 or 30, you may be destroying value. And if we knew that information ahead of time, that approach, that get me in front of them, that works really well with these 70, that means don't go to these 30 because you're destroying value. And the analytics that I've done on this topic in relation to specific personalities suggest that it is such an important variable. And I think a real opportunity for advisors to think about moving forward. So.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to shift. Chris, if you'd be so kind as to talk to us just a little bit about, you've been on the national membership team, the NAILBA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. What would you say to this audience about the disparity and the opportunity of being in an African American advisor, and why should this audience like really care about broadening their recruiting efforts or their sales efforts? I think you spoke to it just a little bit before, but is there a little bit more that you can put, a little bit more meat you can put on that?
Sure. Well, let's just dial it back to just the opportunity, right? There's 1.7 million, and I did a talk on this on the national stage for diversity and inclusion for NAILBA less than 60 days ago. And one of the things they did is they gave me a bunch of data, right? That's where I get the $1.7 trillion that comes from the African American spend. That's where it comes from. I also realized that there actually was a study done on how many African American advisors, period, are actually in the financial services industry that are licensed. So out of the 730 some odd advisors around the country, there's less than 1% of them that are African American. And then after you run the numbers again, there's less than 1% of those who are actually making enough to actually survive in the business. So it becomes an opportunity. So if we're thinking about recruiting and we're thinking about the marketplace itself, if we dial it back, one, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity of just young talent in the industry that we don't currently have. And going forward, I believe companies are going to have to, the marketplace is going to demand that when you look at a commercial, when you look at companies, when you look at the literature for a product, that it looks like them. That's what it's going to require. And so the companies that embrace that and the companies that really understand that will really thrive over the next 10 to 15 years from a growth perspective. So that's on the recruiting side. So if you're not recruiting, I challenge everybody on that call. I said, recruit someone that doesn't look like you. I said, that'll make an impact. I said, if you recruit somebody that does not look like you, you win. I said, that was number one from a recruiting standpoint. And then from a sales standpoint, I mean, the market space, as I mentioned, in the $1.7 trillion, it's so massive that if we take a look at most companies, and I can't speak to all the companies, but I can speak to a couple of companies I worked for, we would market to the African-American space, but we wouldn't sell to the African-American space. Let me explain the difference between the two. The difference between selling to the African-American space is I actually am a person that actually goes out and has face-to-face, belly-to-belly client conversations with people, and they literally will say to me, Chris, this is not for us. This product is not for us. Well, I think you live, eat, and breathe and actually walk on the face of the earth. So I think the product is for you. I think you just don't understand how it applies to your specific situation. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, people like to work with people like themselves. This is the way society is. So as the doc broke it down, he said, some people are going to that 30%. There's going to be some people in that 30% that want to work with someone who have walked in their shoes, who are similar to them. It may be a single mother. It may be an African-American. It may be someone who's of Asian descent. It may be someone who's Hispanic. They may want to work with someone that's similar to them. If we don't have, from a company's perspective, those individuals that they can choose from and have it be prominent, then we're missing out on a significant part, because they will say, this is not for me. This doesn't look like me. I can't relate. That part of relating that he mentioned, the opportunity of perception and reality are two different things. How I relate and buy that product, because I don't want to be sold. I want to buy it for my own reasons and my own motivations. I think we miss out. So there's an amazing opportunity both to recruit people that don't look like us, and there's an amazing opportunity to embrace the change that's coming. And I think there's an amazing opportunity to just get a portion of that capital spend that's being spent by a voice, a culture that, quite frankly, is not necessarily always embraced in the financial services industry.
Yeah, it's just a huge gap. right? I mean, in both the sale of the product, you know, in the community and in the advisor space. It's a huge gap that needs to be addressed. I think you know a little something about being in the top 1% though, don't you? Both from an athletics and a career perspective. Let me talk to you, Rick. Let me talk to you, Rick. Your sales desk is a one-stop shop, right? All the producers that you support can come to you for whatever they need, and they have to be prepared really for like any kind of question the producer might ask. So what specific actions have you found to be most helpful building that sales desk, creating this producer stickiness? And then also if there's one thing that you could do a little more of, or one thing you should maybe do a little less of, like what would those be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's what makes the job fun, right? Is because you don't know what's going to be on the other side of that call. I think I really train my sales desk with the understanding that I received when I was in personal production for 9 years. When you look at financial advisors today, they have thousands of products that they can be talking about and selling. And products have gotten more complex. When you look at all the different types of index annuities, IULs, VULs, just the whole gamut of products, there's no way a financial advisor could possibly be a product expert in everything or understand what's new, what just came out, what's different. In the long-term care planning space especially, you know, so many advisors usually only sell 1 or 2 policies a year, so they're really not keeping up, you know, with what's going on in the industry. So when we're talking to advisors and we take those phone calls, it's important to, you know, provide a world-class level of service, but at the same time, not be literal and provide advice and guidance, and understand that they don't know what they don't know. So if an agent calls in and says, hey, I want a quote for XYZ linked benefit carrier, sir, I can certainly do that and run that for you. However, there have been some pricing changes and there's some more competitive solutions that might be available. When it comes to all the changes that we're seeing in the types of long-term care planning solutions, we're really leading with field underwriting, because a lot of advisors say, well, look, traditional long-term care is the most cost-effective way to go. And that is certainly true, but at the same time, underwriting might not be, because of underwriting, traditional long-term care might not be an option. And an annuity linked benefit solution might be the only option for the client. So an agent's not going to know to ask for that. So that's one of the things that we really focus on, is trying to provide, you know, guidance and solutions even when we're not asked for it. The one thing I think we would all love to do less is have to continue to do a CE class every 2 years. Obviously, the licensing and compliance component of being in the insurance business is a challenge for everybody. But we're more than happy to continue to have those conversations and make sure everybody's staying up with the licensing requirements they need to stay in the business.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that thing, right? You give them what they ask for, but then show them what they need, right?
Definitely.
So Chad, we've talked with you a little bit about reactive versus, you know, the proactive sales when it comes to long-term care. You know, so how have your successful producers actually built their long-term care practice as just one major component of their overall financial services business?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because, you know, I mentioned there earlier is we don't have a lot of advisors that focus on it, but we do have a number of advisors that are starting to make it a component. And first I'll talk about what was really the motivator for that. For a few of them is it was actually their family that had a long-term care event, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, this is real. This isn't just something bad that's out there that everybody talks about trying to sell a product. And other ones have had it impact their business. One advisor in particular in Massachusetts had a client that walked in and said, hey, I bought a long-term care insurance policy, just thought you should know. And John had a long-standing relationship with this client, and they didn't know he could do that. And then he actually had a client go on claim and started to see hundreds of thousands of dollars a year disappear out of his assets under management. So what we've done in working with these advisors is they bring it up. They let their clients know, you know, hey, if it ever comes up, it's just important that you should know that we help our clients plan for, you know, healthcare costs and retirement, specifically extended care planning or long-term care. If you ever have any questions, we'd love to speak with you. And they do it consistently. Every client, whether that client's 25 or whether that client is 85, and they don't make it about product. Everything you've heard from all of the speakers here is long-term care planning, not you need to buy long-term care insurance. It's just you need to have a proactive plan. You need to make intentional decisions, regardless of whether that's self-funding, co-insuring, or fully insuring, but making sure that their clients have that. And it's just the ones that have done it have made the commitment to be educated themselves, but they've made the commitment to at least let their clients know. And I mentioned being uncomfortable earlier. They've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable. And they're also the ones that I think Rick probably experiences this too. They're the ones that actually raise their hands when they have a question. They don't try to play I've been in the business for 20 years, I know what I'm talking about. And they've maybe only ever sold a singular product. So that's what we've seen. The people that make it part of their business is they've made a commitment to make it part of their business.
Yeah. Well, I think this year we've all had to try to figure out how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. I mean, across the globe, right? I have one final question. I'm going to ask each one of you, if you wouldn't mind, to please answer this question. So when you look at this new state of normal, right, and I'm calling it being comfortable in the uncomfortable, the new state of normal, how has it changed your thinking or your perceptions? What are the one or two things that maybe you've incorporated during this pandemic that you think will just stick in the future? So Dr. Mier, I'll ask you to go first.
I think two quick things come to mind, right? One is we're having this discussion from our 5 different locations versus being on a dais at some fancy hotel someplace, right? And we're comfortable with this, right? How many times have you all said, let me share my screen? Like, that is the most overused expression I'm tired of, right? But I think what it opens it up to, it creates 2 new opportunities. One, this is viable, right? It may not be preferred because we're doing it all the time, but this now becomes viable. But what it also does is it reinforces how important the face-to-face is, right? Because we don't have that. I'm not with you. I'm not able to turn and look at each of you. So I think it validates that this is acceptable for those types of clients that need to, as well as get back to the face-to-face for those that really want it, okay? And figure out what is the preferred method for that person and then execute it. So that's just the one quick thing. The other one, and I'm glad, Chad, you mentioned it, is about that idea of being uncomfortable. And that is, we grow as humans, as professionals, as fathers, as whatever, we grow through discomfort. It means you have a gap to close. And so for me, what I've embraced with my time at home with my family that I didn't expect, right? Because we should be living our lives, and here we are. I have really embraced when I'm feeling uncomfortable, don't fight it, reflect, embrace it, and then improve myself. And I hope to continue that. So I just encourage everyone, don't flee from discomfort, rush into it, because when you solve it, you will be better on the other side.
Yeah, that's true. But I will tell you what, I would much prefer being on the stage with all of you at a fancy hotel than sharing this screen with you. I miss seeing all your faces in person, but I'll take it on the video screen as a good substitute. All right, well, I'm going to pitch that same question over to Chad. Just looking at the new state of normal, how has it changed your perceptions? What 1 or 2 things do you think you'll continue to use beyond the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on Dr. Mier, I mean, this is one of it right here. You know, we're sitting here, and we never would have thought of this 2 years ago or even last year if somebody said, let's do a national conference and everybody get on a Zoom call. We all would have said, what's Zoom? What do you mean? I mean, it was, everybody talked about using FaceTime on iPhones for so long. But this is it. You know, we talk about it of what we've done, and we kind of force a subject is we've created 2 mobile studios within ASH, and on top of the professional level studio that we have. I feel like this is my second office, if not sometimes my first office, because I'm still lucky enough to come into our building. But I'm down here all the time doing it. So that's one of it. And Two is, there's a lot of obstacles. This has done nothing but present obstacles over the last 7 or 8 months. And one of the things that I found normal is I never really went and looked for obstacles before. Not that I was taking the easy path, but I was like, this is what we're doing. It's working well. It's working well. It's working well. Now I'm trying to visualize down the road and trying to operate like, look, the next pandemic, and I hate to use that word, is right around the corner. Something new is going to come in and disrupt what we're doing. And it may be 3 years, it may be 3 months, it may be 3 weeks. But I've become a lot more open to obstacles and almost trying to identify them first and accelerate them, because that allows us to get better. That allows us to grow. But it allows us to better serve our clients, which are advisors, and help them to better serve their clients.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. There are a couple of silver linings in there, isn't there? Right? I mean, Zoom calls are very effective. You click off of one, you click right into the next one, and you start your meeting. Even just in those minutes of moving, for example, between floors at the Ash Brokerage building or the Crump building or the OneAmerica building, from not having to go up and down in elevators, it's more effective. But it is a little bit tiring sometimes. Rick, how about you? What are the couple of things that you've incorporated, or the couple of things that you think will carry on beyond the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, the COVID pandemic, especially in the long-term care industry, has really pushed advisors to have to adopt to doing business electronically. Although e-applications have been around for some time, a lot of our long-term care producers were still just holding on and just wanted to use those paper applications. This pandemic, for a good way, has pushed advisors to have to adopt to doing business electronically. For the carriers as well, they've had to adjust underwriting processes and have started to move to e-policy delivery. So I think one of the good things, and one of the things that will continue to stay going forward, is our adoption to doing business electronically. I think it's helped not only the advisors, the clients, but also the carriers as well. So it's really been a positive aspect of this for everybody.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I mean, and I think, carriers that didn't have the electronic capability were quite paralyzed for a little while there. So it's nice to see them coming around. All right, Chris, bring us home with that same question. What have you seen that you've had to adjust to, and what couple of things do you think will continue on into the future?
So Tracey's going to pass me the ball so I can dunk it. That's what that is, Tracey.
That's what that is. Better you than me at your height than my height.
So I think everybody's mentioned technology. So I'm going to spin it on its head a little bit, and we'll have a little fun with this. One of the things I learned how to do is I learned how to cook great food over this period of time, because everything was closed, and we have to now say, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? I did learn that, but for this call, I think I'll kind of put a bow on this. I said, if you take a look at sports has an eerie parallel with life. And one of the things that Wayne Gretzky said, who was one of the greatest hockey players ever, when he's at his retirement dinner, they asked him, Wayne, why was your number so much higher, almost double what the next person was, and it followed you in goals scored? And he said it simply, he goes, I don't skate where the puck is going. I don't skate where the puck is at. I skate where the puck is going. And I think everybody mentioned it here, that getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I think one of the challenges that we have to embrace, and I think looking forward, is where is the next innovation? Where is the next opportunity that we can utilize to affect clients? I mean, if we really think about it, the insurance industry is kind of old and it has not changed in a long period of time, or either techniques or systems that we've got. But one of the things we've got to embrace is just, if we think about it, is literally being able to find and interact with clients literally without interacting with them. That is the next level of this. Having our voice be heard and our knowledge be heard without having to necessarily have that facial interaction with clients. That is something that I'm constantly looking for, and I challenge everybody who's on this call to look at what is the innovation that's 3 times as powerful as Zoom. What is that innovation? Because either you skate to where the puck is going, or you're going to skate to where the puck is at, and you may miss the opportunity. So that's one. The other thing that I think just really is nuts and bolts for me is, for the first time in my professional career, I think that we have started to recognize that there's a group of people that now have a voice, and we're going to now pay attention and actually try and actually help those people and bring those people into the business and give them an amazing opportunity to service other people in the financial services industry. And I can't wait for that to happen. So that's what I'm taking away from this. So I'm just happy to be on the panel with everybody and sell a lot of long-term care. So.
I like the sound of that. I do. So thank you all, sharing your expertise. This has been a really great discussion, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do it. I feel blessed to be able to moderate the panel and to share some time with all of you. It's been very informative and very insightful, and I hope our audience agrees. But thank you so much, and I hope you really have the best rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracey.
Thanks, Tracey.
Thanks.